So I'm Karen Brohy. I'm a Professor of Trauma Sciences at Queen Mary and a trauma surgeon at the Royal London Hospital. I'll introduce the team, but just before I do that, if you have any questions or anything at any point, just pop them in the chat for now, and we'll either pick them up as we go along or talk about them if they're general comments. And I'm going to just give you a short presentation about the MSc and what we do and why we do it. Probably not for more than about 15-20 minutes. And then I'm going to bring in Paula, who's one of our current MSc students in year 1, just to give you an idea of her experience so far. And Charlotte, who's one of our old, she's not old, she's an old MSc student, a graduate from a few years ago now, who's currently doing a PhD with us, who's just going to talk to you about how she found the whole program in general, and you know, how it changed her practice or didn't, as the case may be. Just so we know who you are, it's probably easier if you keep your cameras off so that people can spotlight anything, but it'd be good if you could just type in the chat who you are, where you're from, what you do, say hi in general. Maybe if you're interested in just joining for interest, or if you want to sign up, you're planning on joining for this year. We are recording this session, so it will be available to people who can't join us today, and we're probably going to do another one of these in August during our summer school. The other person who's on the line is Chris Gunton, who is our course administrator, who knows everything about the course and will be able to answer any detailed questions, which you may also pick up as we go along, but she's the font of all knowledge about the course. Fine, so with that said, so we started the MSc in 2011, so it'll be coming up to its 11th year, and the rationale behind the course was that it's essentially a part of a suite of programs that we offer or are developing in trauma sciences education. And obviously there are many courses out there. Some of you know, most of them cover small parts of the trauma care pathway. Most of them are quite dogmatic and tell you what to do rather than why you do it, and most of them are quite superficial in terms of they don't really give you a deep understanding of what, you know, why things are done as they're done, or whether, or how you should, you know, critically evaluate what's done, such that you might be able to implement it in your own environment, develop it further, look at new ways of doing things, evaluate new innovations. And they don't also tend to give you an overview of how care is delivered in different parts of the world, in different environments. So people's experience tends to be quite narrow. And there's a belief that this is the way that you have to do things, and it's the only way. And finally, of course, is that many courses are limited by the need to be physically present, both in terms of students and faculty. So we set up the course essentially to try and address each one of those issues. It's been distance learning from the outset, so that we could target the widest possible audience. It's been multi-professional from the outset, so not just different medical specialties, but also nurses, paramedics, even managers we've had on the course. And it really aims to give a much deeper understanding of what happens to people when they're injured, what happens to their body, what happens to their cells, what happens to their, their whole person, and also how they come out the other end of it, and how what we do to them or could do to them might improve those care pathways. And there's a lot of worldwide experience in there across the faculty to try and broaden it out in terms of taking from a local experience to a very global experience. And then, of course, learning how to read evidence, how to apply evidence, and actually how to develop your own evidence then in order to deliver that when you complete the course and go back to or continue on in your current profession and wherever the course and other things may take you. So, as you know, being interested in it, it's a worldwide problem. It's a big problem, trauma. It's growing. It's not going away like some other diseases because we're just not good at trauma prevention. And things like conflict and climate change and migration are all increasing the amount that we are all seeing. And many systems are being set up and developed to deal with injury care, but they're in different states of maturity, different states of development. And so we need to, the disease itself needs a group of people, a very wide, broad-based group of people who understand how to deliver best care for these patients so that they can take these systems to the next level to develop them. And so those are you guys on the course and the alumni that you will be joining who've been on the course. We're based in the Blizard Institute, which is this building, which is at Queen Mary University, London. This is where the Centre for Trauma Sciences sits. We don't have the whole building. We have a few desks and offices in there, but it's a good place to be. And this is where summer school is based, where you come to summer school. And we are right next to the Royal London Hospital, which is one of the busiest hospitals in the country, Europe, in terms of trauma. Anyway, we see around 3,500 trauma team activations a year, and we're very closely aligned with the hospital and indeed embedded within the hospital in terms of research and education. So there's a lot of cross-fertilization. But not just with the Royal London, with many hospitals across London, across the country, and indeed internationally. And the faculty on the programme are very international and based all over the world, which is one great advantage of distance learning. That's the inside of the Blizard. I have no idea where it's on there. So these are the programs that we offer at the moment. So there's basic trauma sciences program. There's trauma sciences with a military and humanitarian sciences, and then orthopedic trauma sciences. So you can basically come out of the program with any one of these as your MSc. The difference between the first two is essentially the choice of optional module and a declaration on your part as to which you want. So there's one optional module and there is a dissertation. Now you don't have to choose the military and humanitarian module necessarily to get military and humanitarian MSc, but most do, and similarly the dissertation doesn't have to be on military and humanitarian to get that trauma sciences degree. The orthopedic trauma sciences shares some modules, but they have their own specific modules as well. So for some we come together with the orthopedic team, and for some it's delivered separately. And how it works essentially is that it's a 2-year distance learning program, officially, well, it is part-time, so you do it essentially alongside your professional work or whatever else you're doing. There's a core set of modules which are reasonably didactic in that there is a bunch of online content to listen to, which is essentially faculty lectures and online reading, interspersed with some assessments. Then there's an elective module which is either burns and wound healing or the military humanitarian. And then there's a summer school between year 1 and year 2, which is optional. It doesn't count for credits, but essentially brings the whole course together. And then in year 2 starts with a module on research methods and then leads into a dissertation, which is an original piece of research that you'll conduct within that time frame. So the course structure in year 1 is these modules. Each module is 4 weeks. And what we try and do is take you through some first week tends to be basic principles. So for hemorrhage, it might be basic science of hemorrhage and ischemia and things. And then we will move more into clinical applications and clinical decision making, clinical presentations, and then moving out of the module into what the future holds, future directions, new research, that sort of thing. Obviously, that's variable depending on different emphases of each module. The modules are either assessed by an MCQ at the end of the module or by a written essay at the end of the module. And then you get to choose the one of 2 modules as your 7th module of the year. So in terms of order, we go through a general overview of trauma from epidemiological point of view, trauma in different countries, different parts of the world, different settings, different aspects of phases of care, so pre-hospital care, in-hospital care, rehabilitation, trauma systems and how they're organized and how they're governed, and just an overview of the subject and the approach to the subject. Some very structured course talks, some very experiential of how a trauma director runs a trauma center, for example, in New York, that sort of thing. So a very broad range of talks throughout. Hemorrhage in response to injury is about bleeding, coagulation, resuscitation, and the future of trauma resuscitation. Brain and spinal cord injury, of course, some of the pathophysiology of brain injury and spinal cord injury and current and future treatment. Torso trauma is more clinical. It tends to be more clinical, talking about different injury types and how they're approached, diagnosis and management. Extremity and vascular trauma gives you a broad-based view of musculoskeletal care, as well as a week on vascular trauma. And then critical care, not just an ICU aspects of critical care, but general holistic critical care management of trauma patients and out through the other side. Military and humanitarian is run by Chris Janu, who's the ex-head of surgery for the Red Cross, so there's a very broad approach to both military and humanitarian concerns for trauma care in different settings. And then the burns and wound healing module very much around management of wounds, identification of burns care, and again, the future there. So, and with all of them, you have access to all the lectures and all the learning from those, even if you don't do a specific module. This is QM Plus, which is our learning platform that you will use. It takes a bit of a while to learn how to navigate, but then once you get the hang of it, it's pretty straightforward. It's where you view the lectures, submit your assignments. We have discussion fora on here, and each module opens up in a certain time, so you're not overwhelmed at the start of things. This is what it looks like within 1 week. So this is module 2, week 2 of So this is the hemorrhage talk. This is week 2, which is around resuscitation techniques, and there's lectures that you can see on hemostatic resuscitation, blood transfusion, whole blood, fibrinolysis, damage control. This is John Holcomb from the States, who many of you will know, giving his talk on damage control resuscitation. And basically what you do is you click on it and you watch the video in your own time. So different people do this at different times. Some people block out a chunk of time at the weekend and go through them all. Some people do them on their commutes, download them. Some people take extensive notes and draw some incredible pictures in relation to it. Some people, yeah, everybody obviously has a different way of learning. And the lectures are videoed, and so you get both the speaker talking and the slide content itself. And then once or twice a week, we have online discussion sessions with a with the module tutor or one of the course directors, where we have an open discussion about content or some parallel content, some case discussions. Some of these people don't look very enthused being on the call, but that's the nature of taking a screenshot thing. But as you can see, it's much like we're talking now, but lots of discussion, very interactive. And so it breaks down that, you know, just one-way flow of information and allows much more, you know, faculty contact, discussion, and teaching. And I think is important. What we really try to encourage is that people are learning from each other. You know, you're all adult learners. You all know how to learn. You all have access to, you know, vast reams of information on the internet. We're not really testing recollection of knowledge. What we want to know is give you is a deep understanding of the principles of trauma and trauma care, and you know, to really understand from each other different environments, different, you know, that different specialties might have different priorities at different times, and to work with each other, building up into, you know, a really holistic view of where everybody has a part to play in these things. So co-learning, co-development, you know, the adult learning ethos is important to us, and we try and encourage it as much as possible through these sessions. And then summer school is not didactic at all. It's really trying to bring both the students together so that they can get to know each other after a hard year of learning alone, but also to try and solidify their knowledge by putting them through different scenarios. So we have sim, both hospital sim, pre-hospital sim, which tends to involve water for some reason. And we have a session at the Royal Veterinary College, the practical session on resuscitative thoracotomy and acute surgical skills. And of course, strange things happen in the evening. Well, they used to pre-COVID. Hopefully we will start doing that again in a more tame form. I wasn't in this place, and I was just sent the picture afterwards, so I don't actually know what's going on here, and I'll stick with that story. So this is summer school from, I can't remember when this is from, 2016 maybe. And the other part of summer school, so two other parts of summer school. One is to start you off thinking about year 2 and your dissertation and research methods, not to give you a project and things, but to start to think, getting you think along the right tracks. And then also starting to develop you as leaders and you know, people who can work together, work out how to, you know, negotiate, come to consensus, those sort of things. So it's starting to develop you as a group of alumni, essentially, who know each other, who can lean on each other in the future, develop together, etc. So it's as I said, summer school is not a requirement, because we know some people just can't take the 2 weeks away, but it's a very valuable part of the course if you can attend. And then year 2 is dissertations, which are an original piece of research, which might be a systematic review, but it may be a bit of primary research if you're able to do it within that time frame. You're assigned a tutor who's usually somebody local to you, if possible, or somebody at least working in your field. And we have had a number and a growing number of dissertations that are now published on a number of different topic areas. These are a couple of recent ones from the year before last. Prevention of road traffic deaths in Greece, from one of our Greek students, and review of resuscitotomy for abdominal injuries. And you don't have to publish, but we try to get the dissertations in a format such that it wouldn't take too much to publish them, if you with a bit of tweaking, essentially. And that is it. This is our first summer school, actually, and so this was new for everyone, but as you see, a smaller group, and these guys have gone on to do a lot of things. Some of them are consultants, clinical consultants in the US, in the UK, in Singapore, lots of different specialties represented there. A couple of them have done PhDs with us. Several of them are now in leadership positions within their own trauma systems or specialities related to trauma. And that's been our experience as we've taken other years through as well. And of course, there's a lot of going through summer school and going through the program together. You build up relationships with people that you keep for a long time. So that's all I really wanted to say. Let me stop sharing. Do put any... Did I stop sharing? No. Do put any questions in the chat, and in the meantime, I'll ask Paula to introduce herself. And so Paula's year 1, but yeah, tell us who you are, why you did it, Paula, and how it's going. And she's allowed to be frank and honest. It won't affect her marks. Cool.
Thanks, Prof. Good evening, everybody. So I'm Paula. I'm a surgeon from Germany. I live and work in the Ruhr Valley, and I work in a level 1 trauma center, big academic university hospital. And I've been eyeing this course for quite some time. Like I think I've followed Professor Broey on Twitter for the last 5 or 6 years, and I've always thinking, okay, I was always thinking, well, one day I'm going to do this, and I don't know. Last year it was just like it was the right time, and so I enrolled, and actually. It was quite a lifesaver with COVID, because I had something to do every day. So it means it was a lot, or it is a lot more work than I expected. I thought I would kind of have a look at some pretty videos once in a while, and actually that's not the case. It's really, you need to take time for this course. You need to really sit down and get to read stuff and watch the videos, but it's amazing, because I feel like I learned a lot, and it's all relevant stuff. It's not like maybe at uni you have to listen to your profs who you notice who don't really want to be there. Everyone is very excited, and they are interested, in their leaders in their field, and it's an international faculty, so it's really easy to get engaged and to always like it, although it's a lot of work. And So it was okay for me that my social life with COVID nearly collapsed, because I had a very interesting alternative, and and I learned a lot. So first year is over now, and I'm looking forward to the second year. I'm looking forward to the dissertation. Actually, I'm running around in hospital, like side-eyeing everything where I might find an interesting topic to do my dissertation on. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Yeah, I would really recommend it. It's always good to look beyond your own horizon and to widen your views, and that's what you get in, I think, an awesome way. So it's great.
And do you think it's changed how you practice at all, Paula, or what do you think it's changed in you? So I mean, it's early days, obviously, but do you think, how has it or has it made you think differently, or how do you think it's affected you? Or not at all, you've been too busy writing?
It has changed how I think about trauma, because it really lifts you up and puts you in a position to have really an overview. But usually I think the normal surgeon, or usually doctor who does not think this through on the level we do or you teach us, is like, you see the patient who had an accident and you need to fix the bone, and then you fix the bone and go on with your life, and really to go so many steps back and see trauma as the global disease it is, and the burden it carries. This really has changed the whole approach I have, maybe to how I work and what I think I want to do with being a trauma surgeon. So it's changed a lot. And also on an individual level, of course, now I'm pestering everyone, we should start giving whole blood in the emergency department and stuff like that. So maybe for my boss, it's not always easy, because I will always be nagging. And I'd be like, okay, we need to change our protocols. We need to do this. But I think it's cool. And he really encouraged me to do this course. And I think he would have liked to do it himself, but he just does not have the time. So now I'm filling in.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, we want to make agitators. So we're glad that you're agitating at home.
I'm doing my very best.
So again, if anyone's got any questions for Paula specifically, just pop them in the chat. Otherwise, I will bring in Charlotte, who's a few years out now. So Charlotte, I guess your full reflections on the course, what you did your dissertation on, and what you're doing now, how it's affected you, or what the value of the course was, if you like.
And of course, I have to be careful what I say, because you're supervising my PhD at the moment. So I did the Trauma Masters in 2015, so it was still really new when I did it. And I chose the course because I was an F2 and wanted to start A&E training. And I found that I didn't get as much trauma experience as I wanted, or that I felt that I maybe needed to be able to manage trauma patients as I started to become more senior. And I felt really overwhelmed by the amount of literature there was and how rapidly evolving trauma care was. And then again, I found Prof tweeting about the MSc on Twitter, and I thought, this looks really interesting. This will be a good place to start. And I think overall, it gave me a really solid foundation for a career in trauma. It gave me an understanding of the clinical aspects of trauma care, all the way from injury through to rehab. And that's something that as an emergency medicine trainer, you don't ever really see, because you say goodbye to the patient as they leave the emergency department, and you don't see them in critical care necessarily, and you wouldn't see them in theatre or indeed in their rehab. And it also gave me an awareness of all the science that underpins our practice, very specifically the kind of immune responses and coagulation responses to trauma. And they were things that I'd been vaguely aware of, but never really understood. And through the course, I now understand how important they are. At the same time, I think some of the sessions were really good, because you can learn from people who are very experienced in trauma, who have developed very good decision-making skills in kind of complex situations, and learn about some of the human factors, things that are more, I think, more difficult to kind of get from your kind of general everyday training. And a lot of that became transferable to other situations where I found us managing a different kind of critically unwell patient. So by the end of my course, I kind of felt really confident in my ability to manage trauma patients, but also to manage anyone else who was sick in the department. And of course, that all sounds really great, but it doesn't work if you can't fit it around work and complete the course. I actually didn't do what you guys did. I didn't spend the time looking at how the course worked. I just thought, oh, this looks cool, and then jumped straight into it. So I was really lucky to find that the course was flexible. So slightly differently to Paula, I found that it fitted quite nicely around my shifts, because I got a week or a couple of weeks of lectures at a time, and that meant if I had a horrible run of shifts coming up, I could kind of plan around it, fit in what I needed to fit in. So nothing really knocked me off course in that sense. And I found that the interactive section, so the lectures gave me a really good understanding of kind of the underlying principles of trauma, and then there were interactive sessions that were more clinically focused. So that was an opportunity to put together what you'd learned that week and translate it into practice, and occasionally look very silly in front of prof. It was also a brilliant opportunity to kind of break the ice and get to know the other people on the course. And it wasn't something I expected from a distance learning course, especially because this was all pre-Zoom when we weren't used to it. I made some really good friends through the masters, and I benefited a lot from their wisdom in terms of advice for career planning and exams and things like that. And we're still in touch now and meet up at conferences and go on courses together. The same kind of support network and friendships I made in the first year became really valuable when I was writing my dissertation. I think you end up really full of ideas for projects after the first year. And it's helpful to have other people to bounce your ideas off and for them to be able to rein you in a little bit so that you don't come up with really weird research questions. And it's also just an opportunity to have other people going through the same challenges as you at the same time. I also had a tutor who was supportive. So even if you felt like you were a very long way from the course, there were people you could ask for help. And so you're never really alone on this course, even though it is distance learning. For my dissertation, I did a systematic review of trauma-induced coagulopathy in paediatric trauma. And I found there are some important differences in the way that children respond to injury that we don't fully understand and have never really explored. So unlike some people where they kind of finished their masters and thought, great, I have all this new knowledge, I want to go and apply it. I thought, great, I have all these questions, I don't know what to do now. And so I started speaking to Prof about research opportunities. And even though I'd never considered an academic career before, I've somehow found myself doing a PhD. I'm now a clinical research fellow at the Centre for Trauma Sciences, and my PhD is looking at traumatic brain injury coagulopathy, which I don't think even existed or was even recognised when I did the masters. Obviously, my original questions stemmed from paediatric trauma, and so while I've been at the centre, I've also had an opportunity to set up a paediatric arm of the centre's activation of coagulation inflammation in trauma study. And in that study, we take blood samples from trauma patients when they come in at the trauma call, and we take them during transfusion and through their hospital stay. And we use this as a platform for us to be able to learn more about the body's response to injury. We've now been recruiting children to the study for a year, and we're slowly getting a lot closer to being able to answer some of the questions that I had years ago, and that's really exciting. And hopefully we'll be able to use that to improve the care that we provide to critically injured children. And it all started thanks to a master's that looked interesting.
That's great, Charlotte, thank you. Could you give us an idea about what, without naming names, what some of the other people who were in your year have gone on to do, the ones that you've kept in contact with?
So some of them are HEMS consultants. Lots of people have become consultants since I met them, or have got into their specialty training. I know, yeah, some people have got sort of HEMS posts and trauma specific posts. Someone on my course invented it's like an intubation pack, so that everything's laid out to save time when you're intubating kind of very unwell trauma and other types of patients pre-hospitally. I'm trying to think, there are so many amazing things that came out of it.
Yeah, I'll put you on the spot a bit.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. We've had some questions in the chat. One about how much time commitment per week. So which I think came out as 15 to 20 hours was the, but I think officially each module is 180 hours of time is, I think that's right, Chris, isn't it? Of which a proportion is direct contact time. So you've got, on average, you have about 5 to 6 hour, 45-minute, hour-long lectures to listen to per week, and then you'll have usually one, sometimes 2 online sessions per week, and then obviously the reading that has to be done around that, which is variable depending on your the course or engagement. Yeah, so I mean, it's not nothing. It's definitely not an MSc where you do a couple of lectures and then that's it. It is a fair amount of work. Most of the work is concentrated in year 1, though. So year 2 is much more flexible. You're much more on your own to develop it, which is good because you've been working hard the first year. It can be bad if you're not very good at self-directed learning, because then you suddenly get halfway through the year and realize you haven't done anything, and that's hopefully where your course tutor will, the tutor that's been assigned to you will help keep you on track. So, but most of the hard work is in year 1 in terms of time commitment. What else was it?
About the commitment, I found it was quite easy to do it in chunks. So you could do like 1 or 2 lectures a day, and you can do them in your lunch break, or just listen to something on the way home in the car. I found that was quite effective. So it doesn't have to be very intrusive.
Yeah, and different people with different backgrounds are able to work them in differently, whatever. And I think you learn quickly what works for you. I would say that we have everybody who is in full-time. Everybody is in full-time jobs, and everybody manages. The main thing is not to fall behind. So it's better to do a bit constantly than to fall behind. It's quite difficult to catch up. Yeah, we like people to keep in touch with each other in any way that they like. VLE is visual learning environment, and so we stick to the course one in terms of education, but there are lots of informal groups that are set up throughout the year. We don't have course pre-reading per se. The course is the course, and it's kind of self-contained. Yeah, start date 20th September. We really need you to get your applications in by the 31st of August. Otherwise, it takes time to process them properly and get all the paperwork done. So if you go beyond that, you can end up starting late and then being behind all the time. But yeah, 20th of September this year. Chris, was there anything else you wanted to say? Chris, no. So I'm afraid summer school is an entity of itself, and it sort of builds up into a crescendo itself. So you can't really split it. I know it's a 2-week commitment. It's difficult for some people, but it's we do need, if you are going to come to summer school, we do need you here for the 2 weeks solid. Yeah, in the deep end straight away. I'm afraid. I mean, the lectures are not too taxing in the first instance. They're a gentle introduction to trauma care, but it's proper. Like there's not less material in week 1 than there is later on. Chris, do you want to pick up Sarah's question? When is summer school? varies slightly. This year, we didn't have one last year, obviously. This year we're pressing ahead and we'll deliver it somehow. This year it is the week 2 and week 3 of August. That's this year. It's around the same time each year, usually first 2 weeks of August or middle 2 weeks of August. Is it last 2 weeks of August this year, Chris? It is in my diary, I promise you, but oh yeah, last 2 weeks. Nearly, it's not quite the end. So some modules are MCQ marked only, and 3, Chris, are essay based. If you have an essay, you get an extra week of the module without lectures to do the essay in coming up. So it's a lot easier than it used to be. The first year had an essay every week. No, every other week. It was an MCQ 1 week and an essay every other week. So it's a lot better now than it used to be.
I had to do an essay a month and an MCQ every week,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah. So yeah, so it's but you know, the essays need to be of high quality, so they do need time put into them. Dissertation word count, I want to say 5,000 words, Chris. 3,000 words, 5,000 words, something like that. Nearly.
3,500, she says in the chat.
Yeah. Again, it was a lot more than that, I think. But yes, we normally start planning for the next summer school after the first summer school. So we'll get dates. So we get dates pretty quickly in the autumn for the next summer school. For those of us who fall under the neurodiversity group, what extra provisions are made for the exams and essay work? We have full and good support for neurodiversity learning differences across the university. A number of our students, past and present, MSc and PhD, fall into that category, and there are sort of different tools that you can use to support you in the work, and there's also learning tutors who can help you with writing and that sort of thing. So there are extra provisions across the course if you already know, and there's also screening for those who don't already know now. Yeah. Yes and no. So I mean, the dissertation, so you can do your dissertation, you know, at its simplest and most distant form from sort of pure research can be a systematic review. So you don't need direct access to trauma patients to produce a good dissertation. You know, or it may be working on, you know, a data set or you know, people have done surveys of practice, that sort of thing. It's quite difficult to do, you know, pure research in the relatively, you know, pure primary research from, you know, getting ethics, doing a study, collecting data, writing it up within a year, but it's actually less than a year, you know, 7 or 8 months to do the dissertation. So they are more modest studies, but they might be aligned to existing research, so they won't be a data from a study that's been ongoing that you use to look at a parallel question, something like that. There's lots of different options, but where you're based, because you're working at DGH doesn't disadvantage you in terms of delivering a dissertation. It would just change the choice of dissertation subject that you do. So great. So I hope that's given you an idea of the MSc. I think for us, there's the learning and the knowledge, but there's also the ethos and the approach and the understanding that are as, if not more important for us to deliver. And hopefully as a whole, it comes together as a much bigger package than just learning information or facts about trauma care. So it should be stuff that you can actively put into practice and will take you forward into the future in your careers or whatever you decide to do. So if you have any other questions in the future that you forgot to ask, you can either direct them at myself or Chris. Chris, maybe you should stick your email in the chat, and then that will hopefully go on the record. But you can find it on the website as well. And yeah, so any questions that come up later, anything you want clarified, then do ping them in to us. And hopefully we'll see some of you on the course either this year or in future years. Thank you, Paula and Charlotte, for giving up your evenings to talk to us. It's really useful. And thanks, Chris and David, for setting this all up. And thank you all for giving up your time for trauma care. And hope you have a nice evening.